Welcome, everyone in the United States, Canada, and around the world to another episode of It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast of overcomers and useful information to better our daily life and mental well being. I am your host, Ron Rapaport. I would like to thank all of our listeners, our viewers on our YouTube channel, It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast uncut, and our sponsors and supporters for making the podcast such a success. The podcast may also be accessed through our website, it's a wrapwithrap.com, where you can find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, and unique products and services offered from our sponsors, as well as the podcast Book Nook, showcasing many of the books our guests have authored that can be purchased on Amazon. My guest today is Paul Doughty. Paul is an author, speaker, and TV series creator. Paul's journey began with significant challenges. Early adversity led him down a path of destructive behavior and self inflicted wounds. However, a remarkable chapter soon unfolded. Through the healing power of counseling and proactive action, Paul embarked on a journey that went beyond physical recovery and delved into the depths of spirituality and self discovery. Along his transformative path, he discovered the profound powers of self love and compassion. Today, he is not just a survivor, but he is a beacon of hope, embodying the theme resilience, my ultimate superpower. Paul's mission is to empower individuals, both young and old, to embrace self discovery and take proactive action. Paul hopes by sharing his story, he can ignite change and offer support to all those navigating their life challenges. Paul is here to encourage all of us to join forces and empower our communities to inspire people of all ages to act, discover their true selves, and build a future filled with confidence and resilience. Welcome, Paul, to the podcast.
Hello, Rap. Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be on the podcast. I
Well,
appreciate it.
it's an honor to have you on. Now, this podcast features the subject of resilience a lot, and
Mhm.
your story features quite a bit of that in it. And I can see in the background there, you have resilience is my superpower. So
Yes.
it's great to have you on because you're a perfect fit for this podcast. So, Amy, so the audience can get a good idea of your story. Please tell us what it was like for you growing up in Pittsburgh from the ages, let's say, of 4 to 11 years old, and what key elements led you down a path of despair?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Pittsburgh, as you said. I lived in a small house with my two older sisters and my parents, and we my father was a coach and well ingrained in the community as a coach, and my mother was a choreographer and was a dance teacher and did a lot of theater shows and so forth. And my sisters were baton twirlers who traveled competitively. And so, looking from the outside, it looked like from the perfect family. And
Yeah.
so I'll take you back to a cozy family dinner that we were having, and the aroma of spaghetti and marinara was everywhere. And it was Christmas time, and we had just purchased a tree. And we must have been asking my father, when are we going to put up the tree repeatedly? When are we going to put up the tree? Dad, when are we going to put up the tree? And I guess he had enough. He stands up, he flips the table upside down. Spaghetti and marinara goes flying everywhere. He goes and grabs the tree. He drags it through the spaghetti and puts it in the stand. Merry Christmas, he said. So that gives you an example of the type of, and that's an example of a light version of the domestic violence that I witnessed. But I witnessed that types of domestic violence for, as you mentioned, from 4 to 11 or 12 years old. And it just, the despair that it led me down was, and the incident that mostly impacted me was another one. I guess I should say it because it really gives the flavor of why I was in such a state.
Yeah.
So I heard an argument, and my parents were in the kitchen with my uncle, and it was a small kitchen. It had one of those rotary phones. It had a 20-foot cord tied in about 20 knots, and I had a small table that overlooked the open window to the sun porch. And my father was sitting at one side of the table, and my uncle was sitting at the other, and my mother was standing in the kitchen. And I heard an argument. And I was 5 years old at this point, 4 or 5 years old. So I peeked around a corner. And when I peeked around a corner, I saw my father pick up a half-gallon glass milk jug that weighs 4 or 5 pounds, I found out. He swings it, hits my mother over the head. My mother falls to the ground. My uncle stands up and yells, "Doughty!" And as my mother laid there motionless, I thought she was dead.
Wow.
And that is the incident that impacted me my whole life, and I went through most or half of my life without realizing that impact.
Yeah.
Because
Trauma.
after,
Trauma.
yeah, yeah,
Real
trauma.
trauma. Yeah.
That one incident, I blacked out. I used that term a while back, and I think it's a good fitting one for. I blacked out, and what happened is I just went through the motions of whatever was next. I separated. I became closed and not receptive of anything, and I just retracted and I went through the motions of life. And
Well,
my parents,
that was your way of escaping.
exactly. It had to be
Yeah.
because the story that I first used of the Christmas tree,
Yeah.
I didn't remember that. My sisters told me that story. And the only one I remember, well, I remember some other fighting and stuff, but the one incident that I said, that's the one that I remember, and for the most part, the only major one.
Well, was your dad suffering from any type of like alcohol abuse
Yeah.
or was it just psychological problems? I mean, obviously something was wrong.
Yeah, well, the psychological problems could have been, but back then nobody had psychological problems, right?
Yeah.
This is 1960s and 70s,
Yeah.
60s and 70s. But yeah, he did have an alcohol problem. That because what would occur is my mother, as I mentioned, was in kind of show business, and she would be out, doing shows, and then after the shows, they would go out and drink and have fun. She'd come home at 2 o'clock, probably smashed, and he smashed, and that's when the fight started. So yeah, I think they both of my parents at one point had an alcohol problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, what was your escape from your family life other than, going into that show? Did you have any outlets at all?
Yeah, that a great question. My outlet was football, was
Okay.
sports. My
Okay.
my father was a coach, so when he was coaching and he was there, I was usually at practice. So I started playing football in third grade and played through 12th grade, and that was my outlet. And one of the things that is, I think, worth mentioning is in sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, after my father left. I watched the practice through 1 mile each way for 3 years. And, I said to myself, why'd I do that? And because if I wouldn't have, I know I wouldn't be here. And because it was my family, it was, like you said, my outlet. It gave me that place where I can let out some of my frustration um, and express myself without words.
It was like a release valve. Uh,
Yeah.
how did he treat you when he was your coach?
Well, my father never coached me.
Oh, he didn't. Okay.
He was coaching as when I was, because he was only there till I was in sixth grade,
Okay.
whatever age that is. So
Okay.
while he was coaching, I was younger and I would
Gotcha.
go to practice. Yeah.
Okay. So
And
can you
he would,
describe? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was just a couple things that came to mind because of that is, he had an old Pontiac, I don't know what year, 57 or something. And at that time, after football practice, they would throw all the equipment in the back of his trunk, as opposed to, like you take it home as you do today.
Yeah.
And I just remember the smell of that trunk. And in addition, my father always used to sell hot products. I don't know where he got them, but he always sold hot products out of his trunk as too. I don't know why I came up with that. It just
That's funny
dawned
how
on me.
how your mind triggers that.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you describe what life was like for you after your parents got divorced when you were just 11? And I understand you lived unsupervised from ages 11 to 18. And
Mhm.
tell us how things keep going for you and your sisters with your dad out of the house. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess mom chose to live with a priest who was moving around rectory to rectory. Uh,
Yeah.
is that the scenario?
That is the scenario. So after the divorce, my father, I guess he went on to his and did his own thing. It's not that he wasn't nearby, but I rarely saw him.
Right.
And my mother, as I mentioned, was in show business,
Yeah.
and she used to put on theater shows, and she was also a judge. So I think she was doing a Miss America pageant.
Okay.
And she met a priest, a singing and dancing priest, who was also one of the judges. And they became friends, and she then became he was a student of hers, if you will, with the singing and dancing. And they would put on shows. One of the shows they put on was with three priests, right? It was
Wow.
I forget the name of the show, but there were three priests in the show.
Yeah.
So my mother was living with one of the priests. The other priest was quite a gambler because I had family. It was a bookie, and the third priest was dating a nun.
Paul,
So
you can't make this stuff
you
up.
can't make it up. Well, that's why I'm making a TV series.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is like
Oh no,
crazy.
you can, and it was quite a show, I'll tell you. That was it's yeah. So my mother was doing that, and me and my sisters. I was 12. My sister, my oldest sister, was a senior in high school
Yeah.
when they got divorced, and
Yeah.
we lived in the house that we grew up in for probably 3 years before it was sold by ourselves in us three kids. Today in social services would have been called in a second, but
Well, yeah.
yeah, we lived there, and my sister again was a senior, so that became a party house a little bit. And we had friends. My sister had a friend that more or less became my third sister and stayed there all the time with us. And I there were times where I didn't have anything to eat.
Well,
I
let
had
me
to
ask you a
collect.
question.
Yeah.
Who's paying the bills for all this?
When we lived in the house, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe nobody was paying the mortgage, and that's why we had to finally move out. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
At least in the house. But after we moved out of the house, we moved from apartment to apartment, and 1 month we'd have no heat, the next month we'd have no electricity, and so we moved around
So
in a
when
lot.
you were with your sisters living in the
Yeah,
house for 3 years, uh, mom and dad are just like nowhere to be found?
nowhere to be found. Yeah, yeah. But we would call for my mother, and the priest wouldn't let us talk to her.
Really?
He my mother went from one abusive situation, unfortunately, to an emotional abusive situation.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds that way.
Because I just found this out recently, Rap, that it's a generational thing. I found out.
There?
Yeah, I'm back.
I
Was
lost
that
you.
me or you?
No, I don't know. We lost our connection. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're watching it uncut. This is what happened. This is what happens from time to time.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
the Zoom must have had a connective issue. Paul's up in Boston, and I'm
Yes.
down here in outside of Jacksonville, Florida. So I don't know. Maybe the weather. up the East Coast isn't doing too well or something. But anyway, you were saying
Yeah,
about
yeah, I lost where I was.
the priest.
Yeah, the three priests, and then we,
Oh, he wouldn't let
yeah,
you
then
talk to your mother.
yeah, my mother went, as we were saying, yeah, my mother went from one abusive situation to a next to another, and he was emotionally abusive, wouldn't let us talk to her, and so yeah, so that was through that was, as you said, from 12 to 18. I was unsupervised, and that's when I really started to go downhill, if you will, with drugs and alcohol and doing whatever I wanted to do. I had no, I had no
No
supervision,
structure, no
no
supervision.
structure, nothing. It was on my own, and so
Did that
yeah,
did how did that work when you were going to school? Did the teachers pick up on this?
people have asked me that again. You do this today, it would probably be a little more recognized, but no, no one ever questioned us.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't even know where I got money for lunch. Sometimes.
That
So
must have been horrible.
yeah.
Just a horrible existence. Yeah.
Yeah, that there
And
was a guy that used to sell vegetables off the back of the truck, and I would go and see him, and he'd give me some vegetables and some fruit at times as well. So yeah, yeah, that's where you learn. That's how you learn to grow, right? The resilience. That's you overcome
yeah,
these and you grow. So
definitely.
I'm sure we'll get
Uh,
there.
what do you think was the impact on your personal development being left unsupervised like that during all those years?
Yeah. Well, it led me down the wrong path. I started drinking probably right after my father left, and it just continued. Then marijuana started. Then when I got to college, cocaine started. So yeah, it just got worse and worse, and got only deeper and deeper into each of them as time passed.
Yeah.
So but I continued to function. I continued to go on autopilot. I got
Right.
married at 27 years old. I was playing rugby at the time. I played rugby for 12 years. So I was playing rugby. I got married. I had two children. I'm running around, drinking, snorting cocaine, doing all the wrong things. And yeah, I had a DUI, lost my license for a year. These are all things that occur when you're in that dark place and you
Yeah.
don't think you need help, right? I didn't think I needed help. I was okay. I was functioning.
I'm
I had a
thinking,
job.
I, did
You know,
you confide in your situation to any of your friends at all?
no,
You kept this
no.
all to yourself. In other,
All my,
this is all
yeah,
under the radar to everybody. They have no
yeah,
idea.
a few things. Once my father was chasing my mother around the house with a knife, and
Wow.
my sister called the cops,
Yeah.
and the cops didn't do anything. They 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 assumed back then that domestic violence was a private matter, and they were actually trained to take their time, to be slow to respond, that it would resolve itself. So we tried then. We also told our family around that same time. Half of our family said, no, 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 no
They didn't
way.
believe you.
It
Blair Sorrel, a guest and supporter of the It's a Rap with Rap podcast, has written her amazing debut memoir titled Schizoid at Smith: How Overparenting Leads to Underachieving. It is a kaleidoscopic look into a world viewed through a unique and brilliant mind. Blair writes about a little known condition she has called schizoid personality disorder, occurring in about 3 to 5% of the general United States population, that she had properly diagnosed in her 30s. Strange as it may seem, some status seeking parents sabotage their children's chance of success. Early disparagement imprints lifelong low self-esteem, a social phobia impairing concentration, along with a dread of authority figures. Genius or genes do not factor so much as the fundamental influence of competent, caring guardians. The book is a breakthrough female narrative instilling greater understanding and possible prevention of this condition. The memoir is set mostly in the 1960s, the heyday of classic rock. Icons appear as bit players, providing Blair's saving grace and becoming her special friend. Blair recalls vivid life experiences stemming from her distant father and a mother overly strict, stressing the perils of even the smallest infraction, using a vocabulary no small child could understand, and leading her to become psychologically burdened. Read as Blair's gradually eked out a path to attend university, but was rarely comfortable among fellow students or any crowd. Had few friends and found her solace mainly in popular music of the era. Blair bears her soul, going through her family dynamics and their contribution to her suffering. On the positive side, the memoir is heartfelt. It offers valuable insights into the impact of overparenting on a child's psyche and serves as a cautionary tale. Share Blair's journey through humor, hope, and all that stellar music. Blair's honesty and resilience shine through her storytelling, making this book a compelling read. As you read, perhaps you will also emerge a better person. The memoir, titled A Schizoid at Smith: How Overparenting Leads to Underachieving, is available in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle formats from Amazon and Barnes& and Noble.
Believe us, and again, I think it was ingrained already in our family, right? It's normal.
Yeah.
It's normal. And the other half of our family said, hey, she deserves it because she's running around with a priest.
Wow.
And the third piece is I, I had an anchor in my life, which was my grandmother. I spent a lot of time with her. She
Right.
was my anchor. It's where I learned right and wrong and my manners, and she lived in this building that overlooked the park where we all hung out.
Was she
And
was she the grandmother on the dad's side or the mother's side?
good question. My father's mother,
Okay, your father's mother.
my
Okay.
father's mother, and she lived in the fifth floor of this building that overlooked the park, and she would know if you were hanging out, who you were hanging out with. You got out of someone's car. She could see and smell things from a half mile away. My grandmother, yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, she kept me a little bit in check. She surely did. She was my anchor and didn't know it, so I never told her. I never told her. I mentioned to her like before she died, a few years before she died, saying about just referencing the abuse, and
Yeah.
she didn't blink an eye. And she later questioned my sister, like, why didn't you guys tell me? I would have done something about it.
Yeah.
Is what she told
You
my
know,
sister.
that was leading to my next question. I was I'm curious, why do you think you didn't tell anybody? Why do you think you kept it to yourself? I mean, it couldn't have been fear from, was it fear of the unknown, what would happen? Would your dad come back? Or, I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's probably a few things. One, I was probably embarrassed
Yeah.
because I remember when my parents got divorced. This was 72,
Yeah.
and divorce wasn't like it is today. So I
Right.
never used to like to say the word divorce. So that was one reason.
It had a stigma to it.
It had a stigma to it,
Yeah.
and I, as well, I thought it was normal. It's how I grew up from
Yeah.
4 to 12, and we used to hear the same type of abuse happening right next door, the same screaming, yelling, fighting, and
Oh, really? Yeah.
yeah, it's the house right next door. It was crazy.
So
So
you didn't know any difference.
didn't yeah, didn't know any
Yeah.
different,
The
and
way it is, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
and but I what I talk to the teenagers about is when I because I think this is the number one reason is because we don't want to be labeled as somebody with a problem.
Yeah.
Paul has a problem.
Yeah.
But as we know, we all have problems. So, but I think that's the number one is just how people will judge us.
Sure.
is a good
Sure. You'll always be, oh, Paul from that house, you know,
yeah, yeah.
with all the ruckus going on. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's
exactly.
funny. I posted something, and a kid just said to well, you flunked English that year, and I was like, did I really? I was like, I didn't remember, and he got all like, oh no, no. I was like, no, that's okay.
What kind of grades were you getting?
C's. I was a C student,
Okay.
um,
But you
but
were
I didn't.
passing. Somehow you were passing.
I was bad, but I didn't take a book home. Not in high school. I did not take a book home one
Wow.
time. It's a shame.
Yeah.
And I majored in physics in college.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
It would my. I guess I have some genes there that at least my parents were somewhat smart.
Yeah. Now after you
But
graduate,
yeah,
I'm sorry, Paul. I don't know where it's coming from, but I'll edit it out, so don't worry.
okay, yeah, it's. I'm not worried about
Not
it.
a problem. Now after you graduate high school,
Oh,
uh,
there
I guess you went to college
you.
and then
Yeah,
you were in the IT industry and you got married at 27 years old. You had two kids, like you mentioned, but then you walked away from the marriage and you
yeah.
stated that when you went through life until the age of 35, you just went through the motions. What does that mean?
Yeah, as I said, it's kind of like I describe it as I was like living life behind the like a veil, like in the fog, and and just going through the motions. Like I said, that one incident impacted me. It's like a blackout almost, right? So I just continued to go through the motions until I took action. So I at 27 years old, I got married, as you stated, and I had two kids. And about 6 years after that is when I kind of took that uncomfortable step and started therapy. I took action.
Okay.
And when I started therapy, it was apparent to the therapist that I didn't remember anything. So
Yeah.
she contacted my mother and suggested my mother write me a letter. So my mother wrote me a letter that provided me some context of what happened and when, but never why. She never mentioned why. But what kind of what happened and when it really helped because it provided some timelines and some context. My mother had given me a tape of a book called 101 Ways to Transform Your Life by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And it's kind of a compilation of many of his writings. And she had provided that to me a couple years earlier than this time frame I'm talking about. And it sat on the shelf, and I didn't need it at the time. But I started therapy, got a little information, and I started listening to this because it was a cassette tape back then, this book. And things started to happen. I didn't like where I was, so I said that as I mentioned, I got divorced. So the day that I told my children that I was leaving,
Yeah.
I was assigned to a project in Cleveland. So I go to Cleveland, and the project site was right next to a church. Now, I never used to go to church, never had any interest in church. But what I did was I went over to the power hour at lunch hour and went to mass a few times. And I ended up writing a letter to the priest. And I kind of explained to him that I just left my wife and kids, going through this change. I'm in this dark place with drugs and alcohol, and ended up meeting with the priest. And the result of that meeting was he said, just pray. Just pray. What is it that you want from me right now, oh Lord? Okay, so I left with that.
Yeah.
A couple months later, I'm sitting at a bar, um, drowning my sorrows. It's busy, patrons everywhere, a couple bartenders um, helping everyone out, and there's a DJ playing behind me. And I look at this bottle.
All right, next time it happens, I'm gonna log off and just wait a couple of minutes and log back on. Let's hope it doesn't happen though.
All right.
Okay, so we're picking it up. You're at the bar. It's a busy
Yeah.
bar.
Yeah. Is
Okay.
that where you want me to start?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I was sitting at the bar and it was busy. There was patrons everywhere, a couple bartenders helping everyone out, and there was a DJ playing music behind me. And I look at this bottle of vodka behind the bar,
Yeah.
and I say to myself, "What is it that you want from me right now, oh Lord?" And soon as I said that, the DJ behind me said, "Yes, that is God." I didn't turn around to look. I didn't need to. I knew he was talking to me. Another time I was in this busy area that was on the beach, the coastal beach, and it was a public area, so it was really busy. And I was looking for a place to pray. Again, I'm not always look for a place to pray, but this particular day, I was looking for a place to pray. So I said, well, I'll just drive along the coastal road and see if I can find a place to pray. So
Right.
I'm driving along the road and I come down this hill and I see this big opening that overlooks the ocean. So I pull my car down and I come walking up to this area. And when I come walking up, I look in the ground and there's this circular formation in the ground outlined with rocks. It was a labyrinth. Now, labyrinths have been used for thousands of years as a spiritual tool for meditation and reflection. And a labyrinth has one way in and one way out. So I started walking through this labyrinth. And when I got to the center of the labyrinth, I looked down and there's this little pile of rocks. And sticking out of this pile of rocks is a crucifix of Jesus. And this overlooks the ocean that has a lighthouse. And this lighthouse flashes 143. 143. The light flashes 143 for I love you. Somebody was trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
And then on my birthday, September 12th, 1998, I quit drinking. I just gave it up like a snap of the finger, and I haven't had a drink since. Now the
Wow.
problems haven't gone away, but I wouldn't be here if that didn't go away. I could promise you that.
Yeah, that was a godsend, no doubt about it. Now, you've gone through so much adversity, you exuded so much resilience. On top of all this, you have a bout of Lyme disease for almost 10 years that left you depressed and suicidal. When did that start, on top of all the other adversity you were facing? And how did you get through it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of things. While I was going through the Lyme disease, I had Lyme disease for 4 years before I knew it. And if Lyme disease is something that you want to try to catch right away, and the longer that's in your body, the harder it is to get rid of.
Yeah.
It's a tick-borne illness that usually comes from a deer, and I had it for 4 years before going on antibiotics for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So I was on three different antibiotics at one time, going up and down, up and down. And around the same time, I had gotten remarried, and my wife, who became emotionally abusive. At this time, I also found out that she was having an affair of 12 years. I didn't know the 12 years at that
Wow.
time. So I'm in this depressed state because of the Lyme disease in itself can make one depressed
Sure.
because it makes you feel alone, it makes you feel isolated. And so I have the Lyme disease. I'm in an abusive, emotionally abusive marriage. My wife is having an affair. I was sleeping on the couch for 4 years, and I was suicidal. I was staring at the walls, and
Understandable. I mean, you're wondering, how bad can this thing get?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Can it
Right.
get? That's exactly what I was asking him. God was like, okay, how much worse can this get?
Yeah.
But it got worse. It did, Rab.
Really?
If you want me to continue,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So my wife, after 4 years, finally, ex-wife now, finally finally said that she would accept it, because I tried any offer, I tried everything. So we finally got to court, and before we went in to see the judge, we talked and we resolved and kind of came to a solution with the attorneys. The agreement was that, we would go through the house and we would take turns taking things. You take this, I'll take that. And in addition, I had to refinance the house as part of the agreement to be able to pay her off to get out of, for her to leave. And she wouldn't leave until I was, refinanced, till I got the money. So she would be there until that point, which could be months.
Yeah.
So the day of the court date, I went out, I came back home. And when I came home, she was packing things up. She was putting things in a box, wrapping. I'm like, what are you doing, you kleptomaniac? And it didn't go over well. But so I went over, I knew there was a picture of my son playing football that I won, and it was on the shelf on the other side of the room. So I went over and grabbed the picture and started walking away. And I started walking away, and I got hit from behind. I got hit from behind again.
Wow.
I got hit a third time, and I'm like hanging over the couch trying to get a picture of this, holding this phone. And I finally just dropped the picture and walked out and called 911. And she was removed from the house. But at the time that I was to refinance, I had 2 mortgages approved with the most biggest lenders out there. Because I said I gotta be sure here. All right. Yeah. So I have an auxiliary lot across the street. This one backed out at the last moment. Again, I'm in the middle of refinancing. I have to pay her off. Right. The other one backed out I can't even remember why. They backed out for another reason. So now I'm in a situation where I can't even get a mortgage. So I contacted my local guy who I had my current mortgage with, and he got me financed. And at the time, I didn't mention this. I forgot a big part. When I was in the middle of refinancing, I lost my job.
Oh, no.
I lost my job. It was with the big IT consulting firm, one of the big 3.
Yeah.
And I was there for 16 years, and they let me go in the middle of the refinance.
Oh, man.
So I'm like, how am I going to get bought? Then the 2 back out. So then I go to my other guy, and they say, send me your last paycheck, or your most recent paycheck. I send in my most recent paycheck, which was my last paycheck.
Yeah.
They didn't catch it, and I was able to get refinanced, and that's when I was able to breathe. But at the deepest point of that depression, when I was staring at walls, my sister's son went to school with someone, and his mother owned a place in Florida called the Healing House in Orlando. And I was going through therapy at this time. Obviously, I needed something, but it wasn't working. Mm-hmm. So I looked into what can you do next. So I found TMS therapy, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and it happened to be that my sister's friend owned this place that offered TMS therapy, specializing with Lyme. Isn't
wow.
that funny?
Yeah.
So
things are starting to turn around.
I'm sorry?
Things are starting to turn around a little bit.
Again, yes.
Yeah.
For a second time. This is kind of the second coming, if you will. Because the first one was the awakening and kind of quit drinking, and then this was kind of getting me over to a new life, really. So I forget where I was.
Oh, it was about your sister's son.
Oh, yeah. So the
TMS.
TMS theory, transcranial magnetic stimulation. So I went to Florida, and you sit with a psychiatrist to figure out how crazy you are, and they put this thing on your head. It's magnetic, so it's like almost a dome, and there's a magnetic thing that feels like a woodpecker picking in her head. And they put your arm like this, and they peck at different spots on your head, and your hand goes like this involuntarily. Just goes like that. So they're looking for certain spots. I don't know what they're looking for, but so they have three different spots they found through this one in Orlando, because most places just focus on one spot, which is right here, that is focused on depression. But there are two other spots that they worked on. So over here, it would be like every 5 seconds, it would hit you 100 times, and back here would be every 2 seconds, it would hit you. And then, different variations.
Yeah. John David Graham, and It's a Wrap with Rap podcast guest and supporter, has authored his multiple award-winning novel, Running as Fast as I Can. The book is an American odyssey of survival, hope, and forgiveness. Our author, John David Graham, has always been a curious person, trying a new road, a different direction, another adventure, or maybe failure. As a result, he has gone from homelessness to door-to-door salesman, minister, journalist, to founding a nonprofit agency helping people restart their lives after prison. At age 75, he published Running as Fast as I Can, which was rejected 200 times, but now has garnered 25 awards, including the prestigious 2024 Story Trade Book Award for Debut Novel of the Year. The novel follows the life of Daniel Robinson, who grew up in the mill slums surrounding Pittsburgh. All Daniel ever wanted was a family that loved him, but was instead ignored by his mother and had a drunk for a father who used everyone for a punching bag. The book follows Daniel's search for love and its failures and his wanderings across the country during the turbulent 1960s, where he gets caught up in the hippie drug invasion in San Francisco, racial violence in Cleveland and Detroit, and a deadly anti war protest at Kent State University. From his failed relationships with women after nearly losing his mind, he again goes on the road, but more of a dead man walking experience until he meets Kate, who is running from her demons. Together, they get a second chance at love and the family they both want. Because of his experience with street people, Daniel is offered a job helping men coming from prison. Daniel and Kate find housing for Charles Vickers, a black man who spent 20 years in prison for a rape Daniel is convinced he never committed. The local community is enraged, especially when a local girl disappears, and Daniel is the focus of their rage. The story bridges the gap between literary and commercial fiction and will be enjoyed by those who were moved by reading Forrest Gump and Where the Crawdads Sing. Running as Fast as I Can is a page-turner story that you will identify with because it is on some level everyone's story. Running as Fast as I Can is available from Amazon in hardcover, paperback, Kindle, and audiobook formats. Information about the book will be listed in the podcast notes.
So I did this for 30 days straight. My sister lives in Florida. I did it 30 days straight, and I walked into this place. I was crying because I forgot a piece of paper or something. I was crying. I was like, I forgot my paper. And so I walked in this place crying, and I walked out a new man,
No
a
kidding.
completely new man. It really had an effect on
Does
me.
TMS work on your brain, parts of your brain?
I think it's stimulating parts of your brain
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
like, one of the things I remember happening first was like words would come to me quicker, like
yeah.
words that I didn't use before, like haven't used for a long time. Oh, that came out pretty quick, and I don't remember having saying that in a
Sure,
long.
they must have stimulated parts of your brain. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it saved me, and I say that because I want others to know about it
yeah.
because
Okay, just for the audience, it's TMS therapy. Believe they use it for people in depression. I don't know what stages of depression.
yeah,
It's transcranial magnetic stimulation. And
right.
it's used when other therapies are not effective.
Exactly. I was going to
Yeah.
say that, Rap,
Yeah.
because I was going.
Refractory.
Yeah, because they won't.
Yeah.
It is approved by insurance companies, but they won't approve it unless you have justification.
Yeah, yeah. A doctor has to write justification.
Yeah.
Okay, you're taking your journey of spiritual awakening and personal transformation, and now you're doing speaking engagements. How do you integrate your experiences into your speeches to connect and motivate your audience?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, this is something that I always wanted to do, and quite honestly, I have a shoe box behind me in my office with a box of books that was given to me by that priest because I had once told him that I was interested in public speaking.
Okay.
So he had given me, he was so he said you had to read it, and this book first, this book second, very in order. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I always wanted to do this, but I was in that my second marriage was so volatile for a number of years. It didn't allow me to do anything like this. So
But
not
you
until
were married 23 years to that woman, right?
23 years to my second wife. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
that's a
and half
long
of
time.
those, half were good and
Yeah.
half were just the opposite.
Right, right.
So, yeah. So, yeah. Where was I?
Well, how do you integrate the
Oh,
experiences into
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
speeches? How do you connect
So,
and motivate your audience?
yeah. So I've always wanted to do public speaking, and I didn't really have a chance to do it till now.
Right.
And what it allows me to do is tell my story just as I am here in a different setting. So I am primarily, at least initially here, I'm focused on teenagers and young adults and trying to provide them some support because I wouldn't want to be a teenager today. I know that it's much more difficult than it was when
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was a
Social
teenager.
media and all that.
Yeah, exactly. But I lost my train of thought again, Rob.
Well,
Oh yeah,
wanted
I
connect.
I tell
How do you
stories
motivate
and
them?
kind of bring it together, and the message that I have that is important, and as I said, I'm focused initially here on teenagers and young adults, but I think my message is really applies to all. And my message is really three different things, and that is speaking up and asking for help for number one, because as you said, I never spoke up.
Right.
And these teenagers, I'm talking in teenagers in particular, but people are struggling about anything. The teenagers in particular, the digital landscape, like you said, that they're dealing with, it's out of control with 50% of them being bullied and cyberbullied. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I talk to them about speaking up. And also, as I talk about getting involved to build character and valuable life skills, because it saved me as we talked. If I wouldn't have been involved in football, I wouldn't be talking with you today. And it helped me build character and valuable life skills that I was able to use later on in life.
Right.
And the third thing, and I think most importantly, is you have to step out of your comfort zone and take that uncomfortable step. Nobody wants to go to therapy. Right? No, you don't want to go to therapy, but you have to take that step. So taking that step out of your comfort zone and embracing self-discovery, that's what I had to do to get over that hump. It didn't take me that awakening that we discussed. That wasn't something that happened overnight. That happened over a 3-year period, or
Sure.
because yeah, over a 3-year period. So it took a while.
Yeah,
So when
there's no pill for that.
Right. So when you're doing these three things, you're speaking up, you're taking action, and you're embracing self-discovery. When you're doing those three things, you're taking action, which builds resilience. That's where my resilience came from. It's because resilience, a lot of times you hear that it's the definition is that it's overcoming some dramatic event and bouncing back from some traumatic event. But it's more about growing in the process, and every challenge and adversity that you faced, you grow and you become stronger. And
Right.
that's how I've built my resilience. Yeah, my story is a lot of ups and downs, but I wouldn't be here if I wouldn't have built the resilience through all out my life to get me over that last hurdle that I had to face.
I want to move on. You recently wrote a book titled Resilience, My Ultimate Superpower. Is it out yet?
It's actually coming out Monday, which is February 3rd, or the week of February 3rd.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell us just a little bit about it and what motivated you to write the book and what do you hope people get out of the book, out of reading the book?
Yeah, the book follows the book is written for teenagers and young adults.
Okay.
And it does follow kind of what I just described.
Okay.
It is a memoir because I fill it in with my experiences to talk about the trauma that I experienced. It talks a little bit about the trauma and how it affects young adults. And again, I talk about being involved to develop that character and valuable life skills. And I also, one of the main things that I put into it to help build the resilience in our teenagers and in anybody is I put a rise in resilience challenge in the book, and it's part of my speech as well. But you will be able to gain points and win points by achieving different things. Going for a walk, you get X number of points. Doing different things, being involved with the community, X number of points. And I'm building a system with keepthescore.com that'll that'll track this and leaderboards and so forth. And the users will be able to win promotional products, t-shirts and water bottles and keychains and stickers and so forth. So again, trying to get people involved and challenging people to speak up, get involved, and embrace self-discovery.
That sounds great. It really does. Now, you are now, as we speak, a TV series creator of the soon-to-come series titled Behind the Curtain, A Journey of Choices, Challenges, and Triumph, which is a great title for what you went through, which is a scripted TV drama based on your story set in the 1970s. How did that evolve? And tell us a little bit about it, and when will that be released?
Yeah, it's actually being written. We had the treatment written a few months back, and the pilot is being written as we speak. It should be done within a month's time. And the pilot is based on the series will be based on, I don't know if you've heard of The Butterfly Effect or Sliding Doors, or two movies that are based on a decision. So the TV series will be based on me. Again, it's a true story, but it'll be
Yeah.
based on my decision to say go to football practice or not, and there'll be different storylines based upon that.
Okay.
And the story, the book is different. I mean, sorry, the TV series is different from the book. The book is more of a memoir and goes with my speaking business, but the TV series is more about the time that I spent alone. Those years of being unsupervised from 12 to 18, and my mother not being around. My mother putting on theater shows with singing and dancing priests. As
Yeah.
an example, one of the things that'll be in the TV series is my mother put on a show with three priests, and she lived with one of the priests. The other priest was quite a gambler, and the third priest was dating a nun. So it was quite a show that they put on. But that is part of the story
This
of
is
my
going to be a
story
hit.
of being
Paul, this is
unsupervised.
going to be a hit. I know it's going to be a hit. Uh,
Well, I
I,
hope
I,
so.
I got to move on quickly,
Yes.
but what role now does spirituality play in your life?
Yeah, very much. I'm very content. I don't I live a very spiritual life where I don't let anything bother me. One of the things that I learned is I am in control of my actions. So other people's actions, I don't let bother me. It's I'm in control of my response. So I I am very comfortable with that. And I have lost my ego. I have shifted in thinking from everything negative to positive. Another book that I read was 101 Ways to Trans, or I'm sorry, um, Power versus Force, which talks about consciousness and the different levels of energy and consciousness that we go through. And, the lowest levels of consciousness are shame and fear. And that's where I was living. I was
Yeah,
living in shame and fear. And now that I've been more enlightened to these things, and by reading and becoming more aware, I live on a different level of consciousness now from that. I'm up on the higher end where love and where that is. So that's what I've learned.
that's great. Uh, Talking to you, I just have a few questions. Maybe the audience has the same questions, but I know the book hasn't come out, nor has the uh is it a TV series, I assume?
Yeah, we decide on a TV series
Okay.
as opposed to a movie. Yeah.
What do you what do you think the reaction is going to be from your are your parents still with us?
My father has passed. He smoked his cigarettes right to the grave. And my mother is in a nursing home. She is 92,
Okay.
so
So
she is alive.
the
She's not.
reaction won't be a problem then.
No,
Okay.
no.
How did your sisters turn out?
Very successful.
Good,
They
good.
both have businesses today.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And I do have, I'd like you to just address the audience if you would. What
I'd love.
advice do you have for people out there struggling with adversity and looking to build resilience? What can you tell them?
It's a lot of what we just talked about, isn't it? It's putting yourself out there, taking that step,
Okay.
and getting yourself involved, and because what's going to happen when you get yourself involved is you're going to build confidence and self-esteem, and you can't do that by not being involved and getting involved in something new, and not in something that you like in work. Right, do something community, volunteer your time to make yourself feel better. Those types of things will help you start to build the confidence and the self-esteem, which leads to building resilience.
When you were going through all your issues,
Yeah.
in the back of your mind, did you ever say to yourself, this is probably going to work out okay? I'm going to be okay. Did you ever think
Yes.
that?
Oh, every day. And I still use it. I pray and I said, I trust in our plan, Father. I trust in the plan.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I trust in it. And I just let it flow. I don't, you know, just came across your name as an example. That's how we're here. So
Yeah.
I
You
just
didn't go down that rabbit hole.
I
Uh,
didn't. I could have easily.
yeah.
I could have been dead.
You could have checked out.
I could have checked out many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff that we were doing when we were teenagers, driving, or I probably drank and drove 1,000 times. I mean, we were driving backwards down the hills and throwing bottles at cars, and it was crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. How can people contact you?
Yeah, I would say the easiest way is to go to the website pdspeaks.com, pdspeaks.com. All my, other social media sites are there. It's a contact form. You can order my book there.
Okay.
And you can also find the status of the movie, the TV series there as
Okay.
well.
pdspeaks.com.
Correct.
I'll put it in the podcast notes. I want to thank you, Paul, for coming on the podcast and sharing your story, helping others out there in the community. And of course, I just want to thank you for making yourself vulnerable to the audience and to me. And uh,
Mhm.
it was really an enlightening conversation that we had. And I just want to tell our viewers and our listeners that I'll keep you in touch with Paul's book coming out. So we've got something planned for that. So, Paul, once again, thank you.
Thank you, Rap. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed the time with you today.
Thank you so much.
All right, good day.
Comments and suggestions for the podcast, you can email me at it's a rap with rap at gmail.com. Facebook, it's a rap with rap. We have 2,000 members in our group. And if you want to join as a private group, email me at it's a rap with rap at gmail.com, and I'll let you send you an invitation. Our Instagram is it's a rap with rap podcast. We're on Twitter or X at rapper WRAPPER 130. Our YouTube channel is it's a rap with rap the podcast uncut. And our website is it's a rap with rap.com. I want to thank everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there. And for
Yeah.
now, it's a wrap.